Okay, we made a video yesterday about Asarah about the fast of Tavis, which is today. And I know it's a subject I make a video about every year, but it's so interesting. And like I said, I wish I had recorded the shiur that I gave yesterday at the doctor with the doctors at the hospital on our lunch break. We have lunch and learn every Wednesday, which is a very nice thing we have. So we looked at different sources about the translation of the Septuagint from Hebrew into Greek. Usually I'll get source sheets either from YU Torah or from Sepharia. I don't always know who is collecting these sources in Sepharia, but they're generally just sources that are brought without any commentary, and so even if whoever gathered it together might not be from Inzer Chotzer, it's worthwhile, I feel, to look at these, even if the conclusions that seem to be indicated by these texts are not the ones that I necessarily agree with personally. Still, I have reasons why I feel that it's worthwhile to make these discussions, to look at the sources. This particular source sheet that I had, I don't have it in front of me. Obviously, I'm driving now. It's a hands-free device, so it's legal for me to be driving, and I'm not looking at the camera, I'm looking at the road. It's no different if I was talking to someone sitting next to me in the car, and I'm not listening to anything either, so I have my eyes and ears on the road. But, it brought, first from Shulchan Aruch, discussing that on the 8th of Tavis is when the Septuagint was translated, and 3 days of darkness descended upon the world is what the Shulchan Aruch brings, and then the Gemara, which tells the story more in depth, and then different things, Medrash Tanchuma, something from Rav Hutner, and various other things discussing these issues of the translation of the Torah to Greek. And there was another source which I'm not really familiar with, something it seemed to be taken from the internet or from not really sure who that was exactly, but he discussed how to him, and he brought various sources to lend the evidences, that the concern was because the Torah translation was not a literal translation, that would lead people to believing that the Torah was changed. And if that would happen, the whole world would be destroyed. Now, I went on a little tangent in the shiur yesterday about this idea of the world being destroyed if the Torah were changed. And we know the Torah was not changed. And no matter what our neighbors of the Muslim faith want to claim, perhaps part of their claim might come from the fact that the Septuagint did change the text in translation, but the Hebrew text was never changed. But the translations indeed had changes, but the fact of the matter is that any change that was in the Septuagint, and we celebrate the miracle that there were changes, and it shows that God, in a sense, agreed to the changes for sake of the translation. That a miracle happened, perhaps we could say. I don't. Although the fact of the matter is, we do mourn it, so we could say perhaps it is a negative miracle in a certain sense, but it had to be done to save those lives or whatever. It's hard to say. Could have perhaps put the whole Alexandrian Jewry into danger if that would have been the case. But this is, the Gemara Megillah, because it discusses the whole issue of that the Torah could be written in Greek. What does that mean? Do we mean a Greek translation? We could make brachas on. Does it mean a Greek lettering in Hebrew words? What does it mean exactly? We'll put that aside for now. And really, our source material there didn't really go into that, but it did mention this idea, which elsewhere Chazal say that a sofer is warned to be careful with your malacha, with your profession, because if even one letter of the Torah is changed, the whole heaven and earth would be destroyed. It would revert to nothingness and void. And so the scribal art is a very important art. And that being said, I went on a little tangent. Last week I have a tremendous chus every week, and twice last week, to translate the Divrei Torah of Moreno, the Kalva Rebbe Shlita. If anyone would ask, who's my Rebbe, as far as a Hasidic Rebbe, not necessarily a Rav for Halacha, but a Hasidic Rebbe, and he himself, he doesn't hold himself as a Rav, as a Rebbe, but even though he's a Talmid Chacham, he could be a Rav as well. He could paskin, and he knows Halacha very well. But he's a Chassidish Rebbe. He understands his position. But generally, I like to say that I'm independent, and I'm not particularly a chassid of anybody. But some people have said in the past I'm a Bialer chassid, but even though I was a Gabba by the Bialer Rebbes, but usually a Gabba is not a chassid. That's what Rabbi Yasser Ashkenazi said. But and I think he sources that from earlier sources as well. Excuse me. But I remember once I was in Washington, D.C., a little bit after the Kalva Rebbe visited us in Richmond, and I met Rabbi Shem Tov, the Shliach from Chabad to Washington, D.C., who I guess is the Rav of our first family. So it's a very big chashivas, for many reasons. And I remember encountering him as he was putting up they were putting up the menorah in the mall. And I told him I'm a Rav in Richmond, and he said, "Oh, I know who you are. You're a Kalva Chassid." That's what he said. So I said, "If you want to call me a Kalva Chassid, that I'll be Mekabel, b'chol alev. Halavai, I'm zeicha to be a chassid of such a big tzaddik, the Kalva Rebbe. But I go to other tzaddikim as well. Though it's been years, I go very often to Splendor Rebbe, to Tish. We used to go to Savar Yitzchak. I used to go all over, and I had very strong shaykhs to, like I said, Biala, Shedlovtza, but not als a chassid, just have a shaykhs. There's nothing wrong with that, whereas, Tol Savar Yitzchak maybe a little bit more, even though I didn't really have personal shaykhs with him, I use his siddur. I like it very much. And Satmar, I sent my children to Satmar schools. My family comes from Satmar. Rabbi also came from Satmar. Tomasar, the Shomer Munim. There's Zayda. And my ancestors were Abonim in Kula and Chenger, and then going back further, in Germany and in Prague and other places, Moravia and Bohemia, and also Bulgaria and in Lithuania, people ask me, my name's Yitzchak Zev, and they ask me, was it named after Brisker Rav? And the fact of the matter is, no, it's just my elder Zayda's name was Yitzchak, and I had two uncles, Zev, and that's what they gave the name. So it happened to be Brisker Rav's name. But I did have a Zayda going way back, 600 years ago, or 500 years ago, who was Rabbi Yitzchak Bakarak, who was Rav and Brisk. So he was, the Zayda of the Chavas Yoyer. Chavas Yoyer was Ben Achaben from Rabbi Yitzchak, who was indeed he was the Rav in a few different cities in Lithuania, including Brisk. So, but the more recent ancestry was in Hungary. At the time, was Hungary in Samar and Krula and Chenger. But the last Rabbanish Zayda I could find was in Chengeruf, but that's before the Menachos Usher, not from the Ugreis family, from Rav Moshe Spitz, Rav Moshe Halevi Spitz was the Rav in Chenger before the Menachos Usher. But just interestingly, on the side, I hope I get there in time. I'm running a little late. But it's an excuse to have this by to every week to translate the Divrei Torah of Moreno the Kalav Rebbe Shlita and his Dvar Torah, which you can find online for Hanukkah, although they have an editor who took out certain things. I'm not sure why. I was kind of upset because I was amazed. You have a Hasidic Rebbe in Williamsburg who was born in Hungary, lived in England for some time. Schwer is from England, so after his Chasna he lived in England. So he does speak English quite well, and he reads English quite well, but he writes usually in Hebrew. He lived in Eretz Israel. He was a Talmud of Baron from Belz. When he was a Bacher, he learned in Belz. But the Kalav Rebbe, he wrote about Sod Zivuk Ha'atom, V'Sod Pirud Ha'atom, and I translated that accurately as atomic fission and fusion. Love it when people pass me on the right when I'm already going quite above the speed limit. I won't say how fast, but just keeping up with traffic, going much slower than everybody else. Not that much slower. Considerably slower than this guy. I'm also trying to get to work on time. So I don't know why the editor took out those words atomic fission and atomic fusion from the translation, but it's quite impressive to me as someone, a college boy who's familiar with those terminologies as well, and someone who enjoys listening to videos about science here and there. So, but the Rebbe was saying of how science has advanced over time, and he brought something from the Chassam Sofer, a really great piece from the Chassam Sofer, which I'm going to, Mirz Hashem, if Kadosh Baruch Hu gives me life to continue to teach Torah, it's something that I hope to be using time and time again, because it's really a great piece of the Chassam Sofer. And because until now I was saying the same idea, but I was using a source from a different religion. I came across, there's all these free books you can get on the Amazon Kindle, and on the phone you can get the Amazon Kindle app. And so, looking for something to read, there's a certain room in the house where you're not allowed to learn Torah. I like to find different books to read, and especially they have so many free books, that public domain books and so forth. I tend to enjoy looking at those. So I came across something from a Buddhist author in Ceylon, which is now Sri Lanka. Excuse me. Who was writing what he called a Buddhist catechism. It seemed he came from England before that. I think he was an Anglo. I don't think he was native to Sri Lanka. It seemed that perhaps he converted to Buddhism. So this author wrote that whenever it seems that a Buddhist holy person, quote unquote, is performing some kind of a miracle that appears to be supernatural, the fact of the matter is that it's totally natural and scientific and technological. It's just that modern science has not yet advanced to the point where these older traditional sciences have advanced. Rabbi Bart Zadok says a similar thing, and I don't remember what his sources were for it though, but it's something that Rabbi Bart Zadok tends to say. He'll compare, that if we would show our phones today, to someone 300 years ago, we might be burned at the stake for being a witch. But the fact of the matter is that it's actually quite scientific. It's nothing. There's nothing really miraculous or supernatural about the technology we have today. It just is what it is. And he said that's what all of these things that we would call supernatural, including angels and demons and all kinds of things like this, Rabbi Bart Zadok often says, are actually totally natural things that God created, and forms of technology, and so too things that we would label as occult or magical are actually totally technological and scientific. Now, the Sam Sefer brings this idea, and this is the way he essentially discusses it, by saying that, and this is what the Kalav Rebbe brings last week in his Dvar Torah and Chanukah, that just as we know it's a totally natural thing scientifically that magnets attract metal, certain types of metal, so too we're going to discover someday scientifically that it's merely something scientific that that eating chalev brings kares, and putting on tefillin affects this and that, and all of the intricate and so the Kalav Rebbe goes on to explain that all the intricate halachos that we have. Someone sent me recently a video of Elon Gold, the comedian, and he said, we're so lucky that we don't have Christmas trees, because could imagine all the different halachas we'd have to follow if we had a Christmas tree. We'll have to. It's interesting, I got some buzz recently about a young man I sat on the Bezdin with. I sat on Bezdin for, rather, a couple who came from Seattle and are moving here to New York. I'm hoping they're going to move to my neighborhood, but I think they're going to move to Monsey, maybe Bloomingburg or somewhere, I don't know. But it would be nice to have them by us. They're a very wonderful couple, very great people. And they got some attention online because of their difference in ages, even though what was reported was not actually true. But that's neither here nor there. But this young man, he's been, I said on a previous video that we cured a tremendous Inoi Hadin that day, and it was the same day that Rubashkin was freed, and so it's the same thing, that in the schus of that Inoi Hadin being removed, that one person was learning for 7 years to be a ger, and another was learning for about 25 years to be a ger, a Gioris, and she actually converted Reform, some 25 years ago when she really only wanted Orthodoxy, and how they finally were Megayer on Zos Chanukah this year, and that the same day was when Rubashkin was freed. Also was Inei Hadin 27 years, when he probably deserved 2-3 years, something like that, if that much. I'm not saying he's innocent, just saying, to compare everything in a fair way. It wasn't 27 years. But this younger man, people were discouraging him, and he didn't think he'd ever be able to be a Megayer, and he was looking into other religions, and still Yiddishkeit was always pulling at him. And he also, whatever, he was tremendous Mesiras Nefesh and everything, but he discussed how when he was involved in other forms of esoteric mysticism, they had conjured up some kind of a spirit who said to him that he should make Kiddush and Havdalah. And then when he was writing about this, he said that if you want to practice something according to halacha, make sure you follow the halachas. You want to build a sukkah, you have to follow the halachas of a sukkah. This was when he wasn't Jewish, and he was involved in other religions. This is what was revealed to him. And so, and so too, because it doesn't have any spiritual effect if you're not, if it's not, according to the halachas, and which I think, it's really what we teach. But the thing is that, like this phone that I'm talking on now, if there was some little thing changed in some minuscule piece of the software, the hardware, it wouldn't work, right? Or it would malfunction. And so that's really how the mitzvahs work. That's what the Kalav Rebbe was saying, is that, in order to follow halacha, in order to have these effects in the world, we have to follow the halachas, and these halachas are very similar to technology, and they actually are a form of technology. There's nothing supernatural about it. It's totally natural. This is the guidebook that God gave to our world. This is, wait a second, it's white on this side. It's white on that side, so I can park here, right? Yeah. All right. I just want to make sure I'm not parking in a handicap spot. All right. Well, thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. I would really talk more, but I got to go to work. All right. Maybe later. I still got to daven, and I got a lot of other things to do. All right. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe.